Hey, we're in. I'm gonna just get straight to it because I don't know how that window's going, but I'm sure you won't deal with it. You don't even have to see me. Perfect. Right, Chapter 3, Part 1. One thing that makes art different from life is that in art, things have a shape. They have beginnings, middles, and endings. Whereas in life, things just drift along. In life, somebody has a cold and you treat it as insignificant, and suddenly they die. Or they have a heart attack and you're sodden with grief until they recover and live for 30 petulant years, demanding you wait on them. You think a love affair is ending and you're gripped with Anna Karenina-ish drama. But 2 weeks later, the guy is standing in your doorway, arms stretched up on the moulding, jacket hanging open, a sheepish look on his face, saying, "Hey, take me back, will you?" Or you think a love affair is high and thriving, and you don't notice that over the past months it has dwindled, dwindled, dwindled. In other words, in life, one almost never has an emotion appropriate to an event. Either you don't know the event is occurring, or you don't know its significance. We celebrate births and weddings. We mourn deaths and divorces. Yet what are we celebrating? What mourning? Rituals mark feelings, but feelings and events do not coincide. Feelings are large and spread over a lifetime. I will dance the polka with you and stamp my feet with vigor, celebrating every energy I have ever felt. But those energies are moments, not codifiable, not certifiable, not able to be fixed. You may be seduced into thinking my celebration is for you. Anyway, that is a thing art does for us. It allows us to fix our emotions on events at the moments they occur. It permits a union of heart and mind and tongue and tear. Whereas in life, from moment to moment, one can't tell an onion from a piece of dry toast. Mira lived contentedly through the last months of 1959 without realizing that her life had already drastically changed. Natalie was gone. Teresa was a destroyed person, no longer accessible. Mira had not been close to Adele for some time, but because of her other friendships, had not noticed that until now. She had grown intensely close to Bliss, whom she loved second only to her family. Their intimacy was not especially verbal. It arose out of their feeling the same way in a situation, from their being able to look, simply glance at each other in a situation, and know they knew the same things, felt together. For some weeks in the fall, Bliss stopped in only once or twice a week. She had been distracted all summer, humming and off buying paint. For a while, she didn't stop in at all. Then suddenly, it seemed, she was busy when Mira stopped in to see her. She was spending much time on her house, painting the living room, making new drapes for it, painting her bedroom, making a new bedspread, new lampshades, new pale pink opaque curtains. Finally, Mira challenged her, asked her what was wrong, what had happened. Bliss hummed and raised her eyebrows. Nothing was wrong. Nothing had changed. She was just busy. Mira went home with a numb spot in the middle of her forehead. What she had thought of as love and support had simply stopped with no reason, or at least no reason given. She knew there was no point in pushing Bliss. She understood how tough Bliss was. Bliss was through with her, and she did not know why, and she would never know why. Maybe it was because she knew about Bliss and Paul, but even suspecting that, she still did not know why. Late in the fall, before Bliss cut her off completely, Paula and Brett had a party. Mira had a vague feeling of being an outsider in her own group, and she got drunker than usual, faster than usual. She recalled the next day that Paul had come over to her frequently, more often than usual, to ask her to dance. She had thought it odd, and she had refused him many times, yet he returned, over and over again. She had a strange feeling, but drunk as she was, disoriented as she felt, did not draw any conclusions from it, except that she was disorganized. The feeling she had, not solidified into a perception until later, was that she was being used as a decoy. But there was no way she could talk it out, no way to check her perceptions against reality. She no longer got more than mere social politeness from Bliss. Then, one blustery January day, as she was removing the frozen bed sheets.
Because they're plotting against her.
Yeah. I think Bliss had got Paul to go over so that Adele would
Oh.
think it's with her.
Mm.
Then one blustery January day, as she was removing the frozen bed sheets from the laundry line, Adele came out her back door to shake the dust mop. Mira hailed her. Adele looked up, looked straight at her, and turned and went in the house. Then she knew. She thought about it on many evenings, sitting up late in the dark with a snifter of brandy and smoking. She worked it out that Paul's reputation was deserved. He had had affairs, and Adele knew it. But what could she do about it? With all those kids, alimony payments being what they were, she and the children would have to live like paupers. That is, if she even considered divorce. Someone who had not used birth control was not likely to use divorce. That in itself gave Paul enormous freedom. He might think twice if he felt he was risking loss of his family, his home, his wife. They are easy enough to ignore or abuse when one has them, but losing them is unpleasant. Adele's only alternative was to beat him up. Probably they had an unspoken agreement. He did not insist on using birth control, but the kids then were her responsibility and he retained his freedom. Nevertheless, Paul and Bliss would want to keep Adele from knowing about them so the couples could continue to have an easy social mingling. They figured the best way was to find a substitute target for Adele's suspicions. Bliss was not too worried about Bill, who was oblivious. But even if he did suspect, the story about Paul and Mira would serve to deflect him too. After all, how many women can a man handle at once? It was an ingenious plan. Mira thought bitterly about the two of them sitting together, plotting it, giggling. Give me a moment. Plotting and giggling, where were we? But part of her understood. They were in love, and they were protecting their love. It was understandable, and she did not much blame their motives. What hurt was Bliss's betrayal of her. Of course, Mira had to be the victim, because she knew she might talk. Well, let her talk. No one would believe her now. Adele would not hear the story from someone she would not speak to. Oh, Mira supposed she could go on charging over to Adele's, insist on being let in, shout out the truth. She could keep a watch on Bliss's house, and on a night when Paul was there, drag Adele bodily to find them together. But what good would it do? Adele might believe Mira was being vicious because Paul had left her for Bliss. Or she might believe Mira, but she would never again be her friend. Adele would hate Bliss. She might never trust another woman. She would go on living with Paul, humiliated and contemptuous. And Paul and Bliss would lose what they had. And Adele might tell Bill, and Bliss would lose what she had, and only Paul would end up, rather untouched, finding consolation in some new face and body. Nah, it was not worth it. Because the only thing Mira wanted was for things to go back to being the way they had been, and that was impossible. She wanted Bliss's love, something, she told herself, she had had, remembering their long, close talks. But one could not expect Bliss's love for Mira to be stronger than her desire to protect herself. She had had Bliss's love, but would never have it again, no matter what happened. Bliss could never like Mira again, after what she had done to her. Mira went over and over it until she understood it so well that the thing did not even hurt her anymore. All her love for Bliss had been translated into understanding, which was non-feeling, and which she had chosen over hate. What was left at the end? When she knew it was the end, it came to her with a kind of surprise one day after she'd cleaned the house and had a free hour and wanted to go talk to someone. It was loneliness. She had no friends left. One night, when he was home and in a good mood, she told Norm the whole thing, including her theory. He pooh-poohed it. She had too active an imagination. It was ridiculous. No one would believe that Mira would do a thing like that. He was uninterested in the rest of it, except he had some sympathy for Bill. Poor slob, he said. When the O'Neills went to visit Adele's folks last summer, Bill even went over and mowed their lawn. Over the years, Mira had come to feel it was useless to speak to Norm. Their ways of looking at the world seemed too different. Norm could not understand why Natalie or Bliss or Adele should matter so much to her. She argued that he got upset with certain patients or with some of the big names at the local medical association if they seemed to dislike him. That was different, he said. That was business. His livelihood was at stake. For their personal affection, he did not give one straw. And he could not understand why she did, why she let stupid sluts and housewives bother her. She paled when he said that. And I? What am I? He put an arm around her affectionately. Honey, you have a mind. So do they. He insisted she was different, but she pulled away from him. She knew there was something terribly wrong with what was being said, but she didn't know what it was. She defended the women from his attacks, and he was puzzled about why she should defend the very people who had betrayed her. She gave it up. She moved out in search of new friends, but without the enthusiasm she'd had years ago. She liked Lily, who lived a few blocks to the north, and Samantha, who lived a good 10 blocks away, and Martha. But Martha lived in a different town, and without a car. Mira could not visit her. Mira visited Lily and Samantha on occasion, but it was a far different thing to walk some distance to someone's house and sit, almost formally, with coffee or a drink, than to run next door or 2 doors down where you can see the kids when they come home, or leave them a note telling them where you are, so if they need you they can run over. Mira deeply missed that kind of community, the daily intimacy and companionship of people who lived close by. She thought she would probably never have it again. As it happened, she would have lost it anyway. In the spring of 1960, Norm announced that he had finished paying back his family, and a month or two later, he completed arrangements to leave the local practice he was involved in and join a group in the modern new medical centre they were building. He would pay off his share of the costs over the next 5 years out of his share of the profits, which were expected to be staggering. It was time, he said, for them to move to a real house. Early in the summer, he found a place that suited him and took Mira to see it. It was beautiful, but it overwhelmed her. It was too big and too isolated. 4 bathrooms to clean, she exclaimed. He found her provincial and petty in her concerns.
That's ridiculous.
3 miles to the nearest store and I have no car. He wanted the house. He promised her a car and help in the house if she insisted, although he added, "What else do you have to do?" Mira debated. She would like to have the house, of course. She too had wanted material success. But it frightened her. She felt she was sinking into what she wasn't sure. Norm's parents were proud of their son, to be able to own a house like that at only 37. But they were also a bit anxious. He wasn't getting himself too far in debt now, was he? Paying off the new partnership, buying the house, and another car too. They glanced significantly at Mira. She was an ambitious, driving woman, they supposed, in their eyes. She no longer cared what they thought, but the injustice nevertheless scratched her. Her own parents were more enthusiastic. Mira had done really well for herself, marrying a man who could afford a house like that. Mira sank. She was 30 when they moved to Beau Reeve. 2. Yes, I know, you think you see it all. Having shown you the nasty underside of life in the young, struggling white middle class, I will now show you the nasty underside of life in the older, affluent white middle class. You're a bit chagrined. I start you off at Harvard, in the middle of an exciting period full of young, exciting people with new ideas, only to drag you through an afternoon of soap opera. I'm sorry. Really. If I knew any exciting adventure tales, I'd write them, I assure you. If I think of any as we go, I'll be glad to insert them. There were important things happening during the years just described. There was the Berlin Wall, John Foster Dulles, Castro, who was a darling of the liberals until he shot all those people, having read his Machiavelli, and became suddenly the devil. And a senator of less than national fame took the Democratic nomination and forced Lyndon Johnson to go along with him. Sometimes I get as sick of writing this as you may be at reading it. Of course, you have an alternative. I don't. I get sick because, you see, it's all true. It happened, and it was boring and painful and full of despair. I think I would not feel so bad about it if it had ended differently. Of course, I can't talk about ends, since I'm still alive. But I would have a different slant on things, perhaps, if I were not living in this inconsolable loneliness. Inconsolable loneliness, even. And that is an insoluble problem. I mean, you could go up to a stranger on the street and say, I am inconsolably lonely, and he might take you home with him and introduce you to his family and ask you to stay for dinner. But that wouldn't help, because loneliness is not a longingness for company, it is a longingness for kind. And kind means people who can see you, who you are. And that means they have enough intelligence and sensitivity and patience to do that. It also means they can accept you, because we don't see what we can't accept. We blot it out. We jam it hastily in one stereotypic box or another. We don't want to look at something that might shake up the mental order we've so carefully erected. I have respect for this desire to keep one's psyche unviolated. Habit is a good thing for the human race. For instance, have you ever traveled from place to place, spending no more than a day or two in each? You wake up in the morning a bit unnerved, and every day you have to search for where you put your toothbrush last night and figure out whether you unpacked your comb and brush. Every morning you have to decide where to have your cafe and croissant or your cappuccino or kawa. You even have to find the right word. I said si for 2 weeks after I entered France from Italy, and oui for 2 weeks after I entered Spain from France. And that's an easy enough word to get right. You have to spend so much energy just getting through the day when you have no habits that you don't have any left for productive labor. You get that glazed look of a tourist staring up at one more church and checking the guidebook to see what city they're in. Each day you arrive in a new place, you have to spend 2 or more hours finding a decent cheap hotel. Subsisting becomes the whole of life. Well, you see what I mean. Every new person you meet and really take in violates your psyche to some degree. You have to juggle your categories to fit the person in. Here where I am, people see me some way. I don't know exactly how. Middle-aged matron, rabid feminist, nice lady, mad woman. I don't know. But they can't see me who I am. So I'm lonely. I guess maybe I wouldn't be able to say who I am myself. One needs some reflection from the outside to get an image of oneself. Sometimes, when I'm really low, the words of Peter Stefanovich come to my mind. You must love God because He is the only one you can love for eternity. That sounds very profound to me, and tears come into my eyes whenever I say it. I never heard anyone else say it. But I don't believe in God, and if I did, I couldn't love him, her, it. I couldn't love anyone I thought had created this world. Oh God, metaphorically speaking. So people handle loneliness by putting themselves into something larger than they are, some framework or purpose. But those big exterior things, I don't know, they just don't seem as important to me as what Norm said to Mira or Bliss to Adele. I mean, do you really care about 1066? Val would scream that it was significant, but my students don't care about 1066. They don't even care about World War II or the Holocaust. They don't even remember Jean Arthur. For them, Elvis Presley is part of the quaint, irrelevant past. Nah, it's the little things that matter. But when you're dealing with a lot of insignificant lives, how do you put things together? When you look back on your life, are there places where you can put your finger? Like crossroads on a map or a scholar's crux in Shakespeare where you can say, there, that is the place where everything changed, the word upon which everything hinged. See, it doesn't do it. I need to check this from the too. I can't move. Exactly. Oh, popcorn is like the least ideal reading food.
Yeah. Piece of spaghetti.
No, spaghetti you can still talk while there's spaghetti in your mouth. It'll just like slide into the bits, whereas it stays all crunchy and like all up in your face. Alright, so. Oh God, metaphorically speaking. There we go. There, that's the place where everything changed, the word upon which everything hinged. I find that difficult. I feel like a madwoman. I walk around my apartment, which is a shithouse, full of landlord's odds and ends of leftover furniture and a few dying plants on windowsills. I talk to myself. Now, I am smart enough to provide a fairly good running dialogue, but the problem is there's no response, no voice but mine. I want to hear another's truth, but I insist it be a truth. I talk to the plants, but they shrivel and die. I wanted my life to be a work of art, but when I try to look at it, it swells and shrinks like the walls of gleam in a delirious daze. My life sprawls and sags like an old pair of baggy slacks that still, somehow, fits you. Like Mira, Val, and lots of others, I went back to the university late in life. I went with despair and expectations. It was a new life. It was supposed to revitalize you, to send you radiant to new planes of experience where you would get tight with Beatrice Portinari and be led to an earthy paradise. In literature, new lives, second chances led to visions of the city of God. But I have been suspecting for a while now that everything I ever read was lies. You can believe the first 4 acts, but not the 5th. Lear really turned into a babbling old fool, drooling over his oatmeal, happy for a place by the fire in Regan's house in Scarsdale. Hamlet took over the corporation by bribing the board and ousting Claudius, and then took to wearing a black leather jacket and German army boots and sending out proclamations that everyone would refrain from fornication upon pain of death. He wrote letters to his cousin Angelo, and together they decided to purify the whole East Coast, so they have joined with the Mafia, the Marines, and the CIA to outlaw sex. Romeo and Juliet marry and have some kids, then separate when she wants to go back to graduate school, and he wants to go live in a commune in New Mexico. She is on welfare now, and he has long hair and an Indian headband and says a lot. Almost read it Camilla lives. She runs a small, popular hotel in Bordeaux. I've met her. She has bleached blonde hair, thick orange makeup, and a hard mouth, and she knows everything about the price of vermouth, clean sheets, bottled orange drink, and certain available female bodies. She's thicker all around than she used to be, but she still has a shape. She meanders around in a shiny pale blue pantsuit, and sits in her bar laughing with friends, and keeping an eye out for Bernard, the married man who is her latest lover. Except for her passion for Bernard, she is tough and fun. Don't ask what it is about Bernard that makes her so adore him. It is not Bernard, but love itself. She believes in love, goes on believing in it against all odds. Therefore, Bernard is a little bored. It is boring to be adored. At 38, she should be tough and fun, not adoring. When he leaves her, a month or 2 from now, she'll contemplate suicide. Whereas, if she'd been able to bring herself to stop believing in love, she would have been tough and fun, and he would have adored her forever. Which would have bored her. She then would have had to be the one to tell him to clear out. It is a choice to give one pause. Are we feeling some resonance to reality, folks?
So.
I love how old this book is. I love how real it is. Tristan and Isolde got married after Izzy got a divorce from Mark, who was anyhow turned on to a groupie at that point. And they discovered the joys of comfortable marriage. Can't hold a candle to the thrill of taboo. So they've placed an ad in the Boston Phoenix, asking for a 3rd, 4th, or even 5th party of any gender to join them in tasting taboo joys. They will smoke, they will even snort a little coke just to assure a degree of fear about being intruded upon by the local police. Don't judge. They, at least, are trying to hold their marriage together. And you? Ooh, confronting. The problem with the great literature of the past is that it doesn't tell you how to live with real endings. In the great literature of the past, you either get married and live happily ever after, or you die. But the fact is, neither is actually what happens. Oh, you do die, but never at the right time, never with great language floating all around you, and a whole theatre full of witnesses to your agony. What actually happens is that you do get married, or you don't, and you don't live happily ever after, but you do live. And that's the problem. I mean, Think about it. Suppose Antigone? Antigone. Oh, fuck. Suppose Antigone had lived. An Antigone who goes on being Antigone year after year would be not only ludicrous, but a bore. The cave and the rope are essential. It isn't just the endings. In a real life, how can you tell when you're in book 1, or book 3, or act 2, or act 5? No stagehands come charging in to hold down the curtain at an appropriate moment. So how do I know whether I'm living in the middle of Act 3 and heading towards a great climax, or at the end of Act 5 and finished? I don't even know who I am. I might be Hester Prynne or Dorothea Brooke, or I might be the heroine of a TV drama of some series back. What was her name? Mrs. Muir. Yes, she walked on the beach and was in love with a ghost, and originally she looked like Jean Tierney. I always wanted to look like Jean Tierney. I sit on a chair and I have no one to knit woolen stockings for, so it's irrelevant that I don't know how to knit. Val could, oddly. Nothing works the way it does in books. Could you imagine Penthesilea knitting? I'm just sitting here, living out, even to the edge of doom. What? Valerie's vision? Except she forgot to tell me what comes next. There we go. Ready for 3? It's like the soap opera things, and they have their moments and they're hard, and then it's like, well, hi, I wrote the book for a reason.
And Michaela being here last week, and she was, I don't know, I keep seeing it through her eyes and being like, she doesn't
No
have anything
idea.
else. Does she just think it's like a soap opera?
But you can take it, because all the names do come in pretty randomly, you can just sort of take any part as a snippet.
Yeah.
It is good short story kind of stuff. Oh, popcorn. Anyone be keen to do a read after this?
Sure, if you want me to.
Cool. Let's just use it for a smoke.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, go. 3. Mira had a new life. It was supposed to be glorious. It was supposed to be what all those hard years in the 2 or 3 bedroom... It was supposed to be what all those hard years in the 2 or 3 room apartments were for. This was what it was all about. Norm had worked hard for long hours, so had she. For this. Not everyone who worked hard for long hours achieved this. They were lucky. She had her own car, Norm's old one. He bought a new little MG for himself, and a house with 4 bathrooms. She also had, after some wrestling with her conscience, and some tense discussion with Norm, who did not want to say straight out that he did not want to pay for help in the house, so said instead that they could only get a coloured woman, and she would no doubt rob them blind, as if they had anything to steal. Did you follow that sentence?
Mostly. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a difficult sentence to read, yeah. They had a washer dryer, a dishwasher, a man to wax the kitchen floor every 2 weeks, and a laundry to do the sheets, and Norm's shirts. Never again frozen sheets in January. She told herself this as she paced the large, mostly empty rooms. She stood in the wide foyer, with its impressive chandelier and the winding staircase, and told herself she must be happy. She had to be. She had no other choice. There was a moral imperative on her to be happy. She was not actively unhappy. She was just nothing. The rhythms of life are different in Boreeve. I don't know how to say this. Why do they all have to have Boreeve? We're just going to go Boreeve. She would get up at 7 with Norm and make a coffee while he showered and shaved. He no longer ate breakfast at home. She would sit with him over the coffee for a few minutes while he gave her chores for the day.
What?
Suits to be cleaned, shoes to be mended, some business at the bank, a telephone call to the insurance agent about the dent in the car. Then he left her, and she woke the children, who dressed as she prepared their eggs. She dressed as they ate them, then she drove them a mile to the school bus stop. Everyone but Norm was grouchy in the morning, and they spoke. Then she returned to the house. That was the worst time. She would come in through the door from the garage to the kitchen, and the house would smell of bacon and toast. The greasy frying pan sat on the stove, the spattered coffee pot behind it. Dirty dishes lay on the kitchen table. The 4 beds were unmade and there was soiled underwear lying about. There was dust in the living and dining rooms. The family room held used soda glasses and potato chip crumbs from the night before. What bothered her was not the tasks that had to be done were exerting. It was not even that they were tedious. It was that she felt that the 3 others lived their lives, and she went around after them, cleaning up their mess. She was an unpaid servant, expected to do a superlative job. In return, she was permitted to call this house hers. But so did they. Most of the time, she did not think about it. Only every morning, when she returned from dropping the kids at the bus, she made up little rewards for herself. I will do this and that, then I will sit and read the paper. She charged into it, sticking a batch of wash in the machine, cleaning the kitchen, making up beds and straightening rooms, and then attacking the rest of the house, in which something had to be done every day. It was so big. Down on her hands and knees in one of the endless bathrooms, she would tell herself that in a way she was fortunate. Washing the toilet used by 3 males, and the floor and walls around it is, Mira thought, coming face to face with necessity. And that was why women were saner than men, did not come up with the mad, absurd schemes men developed. They were in touch with necessity. They had to wash that toilet bowl on the floor. She kept telling herself that. It's hard to see how that little mantra leads to sanity, but to each their own. About 11:30, she made a fresh pot of coffee and sat down with the New York Times, which, another new luxury, she had delivered. She sat for an hour at least, savouring it. In the afternoon, she did her errands, or on days when there were no errands, she might visit Lily or Samantha or Martha. But she had to be home by 3 when the boys got in. They were not yet old enough to be home alone. She didn't mind that too much, although it would have been nice just once in a while to feel free to stay out as long as she wanted. She didn't know what she would have done with such freedom. Lily's, Martha's, and Samantha's children came in around then too, and the women were involved with the children. It was just a feeling of freedom she craved. But she enjoyed talking to the boys when they got in. They were smart and funny, and she hugged them a lot. She would talk over a snack, then change their clothes and go out. She had another hour to herself. She would take the laundry out of the dryer and fold it carefully, patiently. She would take something out of the freezer to defrost. Then she would take a book and sit down. The boys ran in and out, and she was frequently interrupted, so she read only light things in the afternoons. Then it was time to prepare dinner. Norm usually got in about 6:30, and nowadays they all ate together. But Norm continuously picked on the boys at the dinner table. They were using the wrong fork, they had their elbows on the table, they were chewing with their mouths open. So dinner time was always tense. Afterward, the boys would go off to do homework. Norm would settle in the family room with the paper, and Mira would clean up the kitchen. The boys took their own baths now, and all she had to do was remind them about it, keep track that they did it, and wash the tub afterward. They would come in to watch TV for a while before bed. They had to watch what Norm wanted to see. Once she insisted they'd be allowed to see a children's special, and Norm had sulked the rest of the night. She would sit with them, reading or mending. Then they would go to bed. Norm would sit for a while longer, and by 10 he would be asleep in the chair. She would go over and shake him. "Norm, don't fall asleep in the chair." He would awake and stand and stumble groggily to the bedroom. Then Mira would switch off the TV set. She was too tired now to read seriously, but she did not want to go to bed. She would pour a snifter of brandy, and turn out all the lights, and sit in the corner of the family room by the window. Sit and drink and smoke until 11 or 12, then go to bed. She was living the American dream, she knew that, and she tried to get her mask on straight. She had her hair done at the right shop, and when they saw grey and advised dye, she let them dye it. She bought expensive 3-piece knit suits. She had her nails manicured. She had a holder full of charge cards. There were moments of beauty. Sometimes, before she made the boys' beds, she would think about them, and love would gush into her heart, and she would lie down on the beds and smell the sheets, bury her face in them. Their beds smelled just like the boys. Sometimes, when she was having her coffee and reading her paper, the sun would slant in through the big kitchen window and pour across the wooden table, and her heart would be still. And sometimes, dressed to go out, She would walk slowly through the large house and feel its cleanliness and order, and would think that the comfort of order might after all be the best one could hope for, might even be enough. She was not unhappy. She lived much through her friends, all of whom were having troubles. After listening to Lily or Sam or Martha all afternoon, it felt good to come home to a peaceful and orderly house. Given what she knew about others' lives, how could she complain about her own? First, there was Lily. Do you want the light on for you?
No, do I need to be somewhere visible? I do, don't I?
Needs a strong word, but it does help if I'm not doing what I want to do in front of the camera.
Hi. All the women were attractive when they were young, but Lily was gorgeous. She had a large boned, classic face, wide-browed, strong-jawed, and large, well-spaced brown eyes and a slender neck. Her body was perfect. That is, it was the kind of body you were supposed to have, but didn't. Shoulders broad, but not too broad. Nice bust, slender waist, no belly, slim hips, and long, slender legs, all perfectly proportioned. She had dyed red hair and eyebrows, and she was inclined to buy rather showy clothes. Lots of sequins and chiffon and silver threads. When Lily walked into a restaurant or bar, all the male heads turned. That probably would have pleased her had she been aware of it. She wasn't. She wasn't even aware of her beauty. She worried about her looks all the time. She studied magazines to learn about makeup and experimented for hours with different brands and kinds. She used darkish foundation for parts of her face, a light foundation for others, a special kind for the oily skin around her nose. She plucked her eyebrows and dyed them with great care. She used 3 different makeups on her eyes. Over the foundations, she placed special rouge and powder. She could discuss these cosmetics with great intelligence and knowledge. Mira wondered why she bothered. "You're so beautiful, you don't need them," she said. And Lily just looked at her. "Oh, you've never seen me without makeup," Lily said. Seriously, I'm a fright. She described all the flaws in her appearance. There were, it appeared, nothing but flaws. Her life was the same way. On the surface, it appeared fine. Carl, her husband, was a calm and affable man who seemed never to get excited about anything. During any minor crisis with the children, he would always say, "It's all right, Lily, it'll be all right." Andrea, the older child, seemed to have her father's serene nature. Little Carl, who they called Carlos, was more difficult. But Lily lived with a tearing wretchedness so severe that she had to have 4/5 of her stomach removed when she was only 27. In conversation, she was always miserable, but it was never clear why. Her voice soared up and down. She was always tugging at her hair or wrenching her mouth out of shape. People said simply, "Lily is emotional," or "Lily is nervous." And another time, that might have ended discussion, but the culture Lily and Mira lived in believed that happiness was an inalienable right, and they tried to discover what was wrong if they didn't have it. So people added, "Lily is neurotic." That was not a description, it was a judgment. Lily did not question why she was unhappy. She seemed to know. But in conversation, she tossed from problem to problem, making statements so elliptical and vague that it was difficult to deduce what was bothering her. She was never very concrete about anything. Mira's earliest conversations with her, when both still lived in Myersville, were about Lily's childhood, which had been cruel. One is always forced to pay for that. Economic theories are all based on the wrong principle. In life, you pay for pain and get rewarded with pleasure. Lily's father was a maniac, a sweet, slight man with an Italian accent, who on the outside was a good man, that is, one who supports his family and doesn't drink or do worse. His marriage to Lily's mother was arranged by her family when she was 16. She didn't want the marriage or the man, and she ran away, but true to her old dicta about women, she did it half-heartedly. Frightened and unable to take care of herself in the world, she returned to the family, telegraphing ahead to tell them what train she would be coming in on. They met her in Grand Central Station with her fiancé in tow, and right there, in the middle of the station, with the family standing there, he bet her up. black to one eye and bloody to her nose. A month later, she married him. Was das Wib Will? It was an old Sicilian family. His mode of operation did not change. When children came, they simply provided more objects for his continuing and seemingly causeless rage. He supported them decently on his bricklayer's wages, and they were never hungry, if often bruised. Over the years, he saved enough to buy a 3-story house in the Bronx, renting out the top floor. The stories of his brutality in her childhood and Lily's anguish over it, I will admit, enough is enough. When Lily was graduated from high school, she wanted to get a job in an artist studio. She had always wanted to be an artist, although she only had a vague notion of what artists do. But her family regarded such an aim as proof of her rebellious and selfish nature. Her mother, who when the husband came in angry and searched for prey, cried out, "Hit the kids, don't hit me," saw to it that Lily got a perfectly good job in a garment factory, earning $25 a week, 20 of which went to the family. But even after she was working, her father still bet her. One morning after a bad night, Lily looked at her puffed face and the bruises on her shoulders in a mirror and went boldly to her mother. "Ma, I'm 18 years old. I bring money into this house. I'm not a child anymore. When is he going to stop beating me?" The remark must have seemed ludicrous to the mother, who had bruises of her own. She roared, though, at Lily's arrogance, which did not seem tameable. "As long as you live in this house, you get beaten." Lily decided silently then that she would get out. She saved every penny she could, skimping on lunches, sacrificing the Saturday night movie with her girlfriends. That was her only pleasure, without really feeling it as a sacrifice. She had a goal that swallowed up anything else. She got a small raise at the factory, which she did not mention at home, and after some months she had a little sum of money. You will say that Lily was self-defeating, that she didn't really want to get out. You will say, if she had, she would have taken that money and bought a train ticket to Peoria or Chicago. But Lily had never in her life been out of the Bronx, had never been permitted to act without supervision. She was frightened and her horizons were limited. She took a room at the YWCA 3 miles from her home. Probably she did not want to sever her connections with her family, only to assert her independence, her individuality. She was clever. Every day when she went to work, she stuffed a piece of clothing in her bag, which she would then leave in her locker at the factory. On Friday nights, pretending she was going out with a girlfriend, she would take the week's gleanings and carry them in a paper bag to her unslept-in room at the Y. Little by little, she garnered all she wanted. She didn't dare to take all her clothes. That would have been noticed. Then she began to take pieces of her sewing machine, her only and prized possession. She took the small bits day by day, but the motor was a problem. So she waited until the last day, and one Sunday, when her parents were down the block visiting cousins, she packed the motor and the last of her personal belongings in a paper bag and left.
Ooh.
She wrote a note telling her parents not to worry about her, that she could no longer tolerate the conditions at home, and that she was living elsewhere. She thought her room at the Y to be a palace. She was free. Foolish Lily. She kept her job at the factory. It did not take long. On Tuesday, her father was there waiting for her as she left work, and with him the parish priest. Her father grabbed her out of the line of women threading out, pulling her roughly by the arm. He shouted at her. She was a slut, a whore, a mala femina, who had dared to leave her father's house. He slapped her over and over. The priest watched. She whimpered. She tried to explain. She defended herself. She affirmed her virtue. She was living in a Y. It wasn't cheap. It did no good. Her father looked to the priest for approval of his condemnation of the girl, and the priest gave it. Together they pushed and prodded her back to the Y, picked up her things, dragged her back to the family home, where, after a glass of wine and some homemade cake, and a general sense of virtue restored, the priest left, and Lily was punished for her whorish ways. She never again went to church. She understood then that there was only one way she was going to get out of her father's house, and she began to look around. Although she had a strong sexual nature, she had never put any energy into that forbidden field. There had been more pressing matters. She gained permission from her parents to date. That somehow was all right. She was accepting her place. In time, she met Carl. He was mild and gentle, totally unlike her father. He was also steady in personality and in life. Her parents approved. Lily and Carl became engaged. At that moment, things changed. She was permitted more liberty. Her father stopped beating her, although he might slap her around a little. She understood that she was now seen as the property of another man. Because Carl was mild, this constriction seemed liberation to her. She began to act more and more independently and came home one night when she was 20 and announced that she had rented a store, that she was quitting her job, and that she was going to open a dress shop. They didn't even ask her where she got the money. Perhaps they thought Carl was giving it to her, but it was her own savings of a year and a half. They shrugged. She was no longer their responsibility. Foolish Lily. What did she know about the clothing business? She went around to factories and bought what she liked, guessed at the markup, and worked in the store all day and into the night, 7 days a week. She was driven with energy, and she was happy. On Saturday night, she would choose something from her own shop and paste inch-thick makeup on her face, and she and Carl would go to a nightclub. Carl enjoyed taking her to nightclubs. He liked getting dressed up and showing her off and spending money with his friends. He was in no rush to get married. But Lily's business didn't do well. She wasn't hard enough, and she had no experience. Women would buy a dress on Friday and return it on Monday, obviously worn, and ask for their money back. She did not know how to refuse them. Her selection of clothes was not objective enough. It was based on her taste alone. For a while, she kept the thing going, working alone in the shop, her energy unflagging. She kept it going until all her savings were gone, and the month arrived when she could not pay the rent. Her dream had lasted just a year. Tearful, she sold out her scanty remaining stock for less than cost, declared bankruptcy, and married Carl.
Wow.
Your turn?
Yeah. Reached that stage of my life.
Oh yeah, I feel you.
Carl's tranquil surface was a result of careful self-control as well as inherited temperament. Carl's father had abandoned the family when Carl was 5. His mother, a passive and tranquil woman, got a job cleaning houses, but the 5 children were left mostly to themselves. She earned very little, arriving home late at night, and she was tired, and her own house went unclean, her children unfed. The oldest daughter, Marie, took over as best she could, but she was, as Carl would put it later, selfish. She wanted her own life. Half-heartedly she cooked, but that was all. She did it for 4 years, and when she was 18, she took off to live on her own. Nobody cleaned, and marketing was as haphazard as the money. It was a dismal life for a child, and frustrating to someone as fastidious as Carl already was. Still, even when he was older, he did not attempt to help out in the household chores. He deeply believed they were women's work. Carl had contempt for his mother's weakness, her inability to take over and run things, to give decent background to his life. All the children had to work. They did anything. Lillian took over. Carl, who was the youngest, followed his brother Edwin into the streets. The streets provided them with an outlet for some of what seethed inside of them. Sports, mischief, and fighting filled non-working afternoons. Once they got caught stealing fruit from the stand, and once they kidnapped a local sissy and hanged him from a clothesline post. Someone saw the child and cut him down before he strangled. In both cases, there was not too much fuss. But over the years, the boys on the street began to disappear into reformatories and later on prisons. Carl began to think about the future. Carl always said World War II was the best thing that ever happened to him. He had some flaws in his body, nothing serious, mostly as a result of his inadequate diet as a child, but enough when added up to mark him for F. So when all the other men had been drafted, Carl was able to get a job in a defence plant where he learned eventually to be a skilled machinist. He was very good at it. His German father, perhaps, had left him a legacy of precision and order. He did well and was liked. He had learned on the streets how to act cool. He seemed easygoing, affable, bland, unjudging. What went on under the exterior one can only guess. Even Lily was never sure. He never cracked. Carl and Edwin and Lillian were all working, so moved their mother into a decent apartment, made her give up her job, and settled back to enjoy the fruits of her labours in their own behalf. But the woman was weak and worn out. She had long since given up. She cooked and marketed, but she never learned how to operate the washing machine they had bought her. She cleaned randomly, ineffectually. Carl's early contempt was heightened. It was her Italian nature, he thought, that made her slovenly. Although she died simply worn out within 2 years after her assumption into a life of luxury, he did not change his opinion. Although Carl did not object to getting married, he did not want his life to change. Weeknights he hung out with his friends from the old neighbourhood, playing cards. On Saturday nights he took Lily out and he slept most of Sunday. He enjoyed his life. When his mother died, the home broke up. Edwin got married and Lillian got a job in Manhattan and moved. So when Lily said she was losing the shop, it seemed the right time. To Carl, marriage presented the perfect way for him to continue in his life as it was. He urged Lily to get a job. She was pleased at this. It seemed to her that he did not intend to constrict her as her mother had been constricted. She got a job as a receptionist in a fancy office. That was good, Carl said. She didn't earn much, but it was easy work. She discovered only gradually that Carl never articulated just what he expected of her.
But Carl, sorry? Fucking plane.
Carl never articulated what he
She
expected.
discovered only gradually, for Carl never articulated it, just what he expected of her. He wanted her to work so that they could continue to have the money to go to clubs on Saturday nights. He also expected her to keep the apartment immaculate and to handle the marketing, cooking, and laundry chores with silent efficiency. He did not say this, but if something were neglected, he pointed it out in a cold, contemptuous remark. You didn't get the laundry done, or the kitchen floor is filthy, Lily. He never helped. He sat in the chair reading his newspaper and watching TV, occasionally getting up to criticise her work. She argued with him, but somehow she always lost. Carl never raised his voice. He merely stared coldly at her. And if she were guilty of some sloppiness or neglect, he treated her with disdain, turning away from her in bed, not allowing her even to touch him, as if her body were defiled. Lily's independence and courage crumbled under this oblique approach. If he had abused her as her father had, she would have found the strength to fight him. As it was, she fell into line. His contempt was so cruel to her that she would do anything to avoid it. She scrubbed and vacuumed. She laboured over cookbooks. Still, he always found a flaw, a spot left undusted, a meal he didn't like. Many nights he turned his back on her in bed. He had discovered on their honeymoon that Lily was sexual. It is odd. It seems to defy all textbook knowledge, but Lily enjoyed sex. She would have orgasm after orgasm while Carl watched her with incredible disgust. It was a worse punishment to her than any strap when she touched Carl with light fingers and he shivered and pulled away. She felt that he thought she was filthy. She tried to prove to him that she was worthy. Despite the frequently turned back, Lily got pregnant. That this really shook Carl up. A child would mean the end of his life. Lily would have to quit her job. There would no longer be money enough to play poker with the guys 3 nights a week, or to hang out with the bunch at Carmine's on Saturday nights. There would be a squalling kid to contend with. He insisted she have an abortion. Slave-like, Lily obeyed. She went through it like a robot, barely seeing the dirty back room, the sleaziness around her. But that act changed her, and changed her relation to Carl. She never forgave him for the abortion. She did not talk about it to him or anyone else until years later. It hardened her towards him. She wasn't sure she wanted a child. The thought terrified her, but the abortion had violated some inner part of her that she had not even known to exist. Having a child became tremendously important. It was the sign of victory in the power struggle that her marriage to Carl had become. She got pregnant again a few months later, and this time she was adamant. None of Carl's arguments touched her. Not even his refusal to have sex with her could touch her. She did not even have to quit her job. She was fired. Receptionists are not permitted to be visibly pregnant. Carl wanted her to find another for a few months at least, but she refused. She was fighting for her right to stay home and do nothing but care for the apartment. She did still try to keep it to Carl's satisfaction. Carl muttered and gave up 2 nights of poker and Saturday nights at Carmine's. Lily clamoured to be taken out. Carl took her to a Chinese restaurant once every few weeks. You can't have everything, he said resentfully to her. The baby was a girl, a calm, happy child. Carl ignored it, calling Lily if the baby fussed. Lily was confused. She felt she had won the battle but lost the war. They moved, under Lily's prodding, to a small house in Jackson Heights. A couple of years later, Lily got pregnant again, and after the baby, an intense, clamorous, wild creature was born. They moved again. Carl had gotten a good job with a New Jersey-based firm. He had money enough to purchase a small house in a suburban neighborhood. He missed his old poker buddies. He sank into domesticity, reading the paper, watching TV, mowing the lawn. He fell into the habit of answering the increasingly clamorous Lily, no matter what she said, with, yes, yeah, Lily, it's okay, it'll be all right. Number 6. Carlos was an enormous baby. He had a large head, and it too was as big as some 4-year-olds. He also had and it's time to shut the doors.
Yeah, Bretland's checking my fucking.
That's that.
Where did we gone?
Woo. I'm enjoying Lily.
Mmm.
Very abrupt, wasn't it?
Yeah, I like when she goes into all the stories of the other women. It's just like a couple of fucking sections and it's...
And a whole nother world just opened with a new set of kind of hardships that someone's dealing with.
So it's the same world from different perspective. It's just like, yeah, it's just it's so
different.
repetitive and so different. Like,
Yeah.
Oh,
Well done. Just getting used to having glasses to read. It's weird. They're just supermarket ones. I'm going to have to go and actually get proper ones because my eyes are different. But at least I can see. Right. Carlos was an enormous baby. He had a large head, and it too was as big as some 4-year-olds. He also had a tempestuous disposition. He was easily frustrated and threw tantrums continually. He reminded Lily of her father. She was terrified of him. He tried continually to climb up on her. He was always reaching for her, touching her, holding onto her legs, and she continually pushed him away. She did not want him on her. She could pick one hand off her ear, only had to have him grab her around the neck. Would pull that one off, only to have him grab her arm. She would peel both his hands away and try to set him down on the floor, and he would scream and turn blue. Lily's denial of the infant, Carl had nothing to do with either child, had seemingly contradictory consequences. On the one hand, he was inordinately shy. He would put his hands over his face if a stranger came into the room. Sometimes, although he could walk, he would crawl into a corner and hide from guests, even familiar ones like his grandmother. But he was screamingly aggressive with Lily. As he grew older, he carried both his shyness and his aggression into the outer world. He was violent and abusive with the children he knew and would run and hide from any
No, you
strange
gotta do that
child.
handle. Yep.
At 5, he no longer tried to touch Lily and pulled away from her if she touched him. He had picked up his father's unspoken judgments with an acuity that was astonishing. You, what are you good for? You ain't good for nothing. You can't even wash the floor right.
Oh my gosh.
Why don't you go wash the floor, stupid? Lily would flutter and scold. When Carl came home, she complained to him. Carl would say, he's just a kid, Lily. It's all right. He'll outgrow it. He'd sit down at the dinner table and add, besides, he's right. Look, you didn't even put forks on the table. It was true. Lily was guilty of being a poor housewife. She kept the place clean, but she was disorganized. Her mind was perpetually confused because she knew she had wanted to be a housewife and stay home with the children. But there was something nagging at her from underneath. Somehow she didn't like her life. She decided it was Carl's fault. He never talked to her, never played with the children. She began a campaign of complaint and nagging. Carl would sigh on the nights when she launched into this tirade. He would put down his paper and turn off the TV and sit with crossed arms in his chair and face her. Okay, Lily, okay. What do you want to talk about? She paused. Well, what happened at work today? Carl was silent for a long time, pondering. Finally he said, well, yes, something did happen today. These guys came into the shop with tools and wires, and they made holes, and they drilled and clasped and strung and worked for about an hour. Then they put a new telephone at the other end of the shop. Lily laughed nervously. Carl, she began to protest. He picked his paper up. That's it, Lily. That's what happened at work today. She would complain that he had nothing to do with the children. For instance, Carlos wouldn't eat anything except cookies and peanut butter sandwiches. He had to learn to eat. Carl would let it slide. Okay, Lily, all right. He wants to eat peanut butter, let him eat peanut butter. But every once in a while, when Carlos refused his dinner, Carl would rise up and grab Carlos and haul him up to his room and beat him with his belt. Then Lily would scream and cry and wring her hands. He would look at her blandly. Well, what do you want? You were saying he needs to learn. I don't know what you want, Lily. Lily was as stubborn as he. Her complaints did not cease. The voice swooped up higher and down lower with every passing year. Carl could not stand it anymore. He called his brother, and for 3 months the two of them and assorted friends built a room over the garage. It was a large, bright room with its own bathroom and a staircase on the outside of the house. It could not be reached from inside. He moved in. He would come home from work and eat with the family. Immediately afterward, he would depart for his room, to which he had the only key.
You shall not win.
I think it needs the hinges adjusted.
Or maybe less of the fucking wires in it. But yeah.
Oh, yeah, true.
Yeah.
Where were we?
Not a bad idea with the room.
There he would watch TV and read his paper in silent and tranquility and sleep undisturbed by tentative fingers. Lily clamoured when she saw him, but he answered mildly, Look, you got the house, you got the kids, I pay the bills. We go out together, don't we? Nobody knows. What have you got to complain about? It was at about this time that Mira met Lily and wondered at her flashy social appearance. Lily did not seem to be trying to attract men. It never occurred to Mira that Lily was trying to seduce her own husband. That's the end of that chapter.
Nice.
Yeah.
Just finish rolling this guy. Something about hanging the sissy was like, let's go another. Which, whoa, brutal.
Mira's experience was so different. She had completely settled into her new easy life. The mornings were bad. She hated to get up. Norm had to call her and shake her, and she would stagger downstairs and hang like an exhausted alcoholic over a clutched mug of coffee. The children were unhappy in the morning, like her. They would argue and complain about the breakfast. They refused to eat an egg that was cooked too long or not long enough. They no longer liked their cereal. They wanted English muffins or they wanted toast. She left the kitchen to dress while they lamented their miserable existences. And more often than not, she came back from driving them to the bus stop to throw their breakfasts in the garbage. After her return, after that heart-sinking moment of coming back to the greasy frying pan and the littered table, there was cleaning. The afternoons, though, were better. Money was plentiful despite all the loans, and one thing Norm was willing to spend on was the house. So Mira's afternoons were spent in an orgy of planning decor and buying furniture, rugs, draperies, lamps, pictures. Slowly the house filled up. It got to be hard to handle, so she bought herself a small file box and some packages of 2x3 cards. On each card she wrote one task that had to be performed and filed them in sections. The section headed window washing would contain cards for each room in the house. Whenever she washed the windows in one room, she would mark the date down on the card and place it at the end of the section. The same was true for furniture polishing, rug shampooing, and china.
Somewhere between loving her and hating her right now.
It's quite clever.
Yeah, it's too clever. That's why I hate her. That. It threatens me. That's what it is.
Regularly, she removed all the dishes from the dining room china cabinet and washed them by hand. They were good china, not to be entrusted to the dishwasher, and returned them to their freshly washed shelves. She did the same in the kitchen. She did the same thing with the books, removing them, dusting them carefully, and returning them to clean the wiped, waxed shelves. She did not make cards for ordinary daily cleaning, only for the large, special tasks. So each day, after the small chores of cleaning kitchen, making beds, and cleaning the main 2 bathrooms, she would also perform a thorough cleaning of one room, washing mirrors and windows, waxing any visible wooden floors, cleaning the small ornaments, dusting ceilings and walls and furniture surfaces, and vacuuming. She would then mark on the appropriate card the large task accomplished. That way, she reasoned, she would always keep up. It took her 2 weeks to go through the whole house, 10 working days. She did not clean on weekends. And extraordinary tasks like cleaning every dish in the kitchen and pantry, she did only twice a year. The same was true of the curtains. It was good housewifery performed in the old way. Mira's mother cleaned this way, although without the cards, and had scrubbed sheets and shirts on a scrub board and walked 2 miles each way to the market. The Ward's house was always shining and smelled fresh of lemons, oil, and soap. Mira would feel tremendously satisfied when she finished her morning's work. She would bathe then, using expensive bath oil and smooth and expensive lotion all over her body when she was through. She felt luxurious. She would stand in the door of her enormous closet in a thick velour robe and choose her outfit for the afternoon. She chose her perfume and makeup to complement the outfit. She would walk through the house, dressed to go out, relishing the silence, the order, the shine of polished wood in the sun. Her mother-in-law had given her a clock similar to the one she owned, an old-fashioned clock with a great glass dome over it that struck the hour with chimes and the quarter hours with little bells. It ticked loudly, and you could hear it in most of the downstairs rooms. She walked, listening to its ticking, feeling the order and the peace, the cleanliness, the comfort. She would walk to the kitchen. The morning light had slid away, and the paler light shone on the old hutch, making the clean china pieces, old pitchers and cups, charming unmatched plates, standing on end on the shelves, gleam and reflect. The beauty was her doing. The clock ticked. She would go out then on a shopping expedition, or to do errands, or on an infrequent visit to one of her friends. The boys were older now. She could tarry a bit and not get home until 4. But she was usually annoyed when she did get home. There was always something, it seemed, muddy footprints, fingerprints on a clean wall, a blackened towel. She would rage at the boys. They largely ignored her. They did not understand, she knew that. The cleanliness and order were her life. They had cost her everything. When she came home, it was usually to go out again. The boys had appointments with the dentist, the orthodontist, games with Little League, scout meetings, Clark had violin lessons, Normie trumpet lessons. On Saturday mornings, she took them for riding lessons, waited and took them back while Norm went out to play golf. Her nights were calmer than they had been. Norm was very busy these days and often did not come home for dinner. She fell into the habit of feeding the boys early and continued it even on nights when he did come home. It was better. They could eat and go off and do homework and then watch TV. Or on summer evenings, go out and play ball for a while before baths and bed. Norm was more pleasant at the dinner table when the boys were not there. After about 9 o'clock, she was free. Norm would sit watching TV. She would glance up at it and back at her book. But he tired early and went to bed. She liked sitting there alone, listening to the silence of the sleeping house, the night noises outside, a barking dog, a car starting up, all measured by the ticking clock. In nice weather, she worked in the garden. She would drive to the nursery in the spring and pick up boxes of spring flowers, pansies, violets, crocuses, irises, lily of the valley, daffodils, and jonquil, and set them lovingly in the damp, sweet, sour earth. The air was soft and a little wet, and she enjoyed feeling the cool, damp, dungy earth in her hands. She stood, looking around, planning the garden.
It kept swinging open.
Shouldn't have been closed.
We've closed the wind doors as well, but it still keeps rough.
She bought lounges for the patio and glass-topped tables. She hung a bird feeder. When Norm did not come home for dinner, or when he ate and went out again to a meeting, Neva would spend the evening reading. Then at about 11, she would pour herself a drink, turn out the lights, and sit and think. He never came in very late, always by 12, and he always tripped on the doorstep from garage to kitchen hall, and he always yelled out, complaining, "Why the hell didn't you keep the light on?" Still, she never left it on. She would offer food, but he was never hungry. He would pour himself a rye, Canadian Club, or a brandy, and sit across from her with the light turned on. "How was your day?" "Okay," he'd sigh. His collar button was undone, his tie pulled loose, and he looked tired. That burn case was coming on better. That case of hives was more serious than I thought. It was internal now. Poor Mrs. Waterhouse, whom he'd sent over to Bob, had CA that had spread. There was no hope. They could give radiation treatments, but that would only prolong the agony. Her children wanted to do it, however. He had explained, and so had Bob, that it was a great expense and could do little but prolong, but they had insisted they wanted to feel they had done everything possible. They feel guilty because they want her to die. He burst out in exasperation. "Why do you say a thing like that? It's ridiculous. You don't even know these people and you say a thing like that. They just want to feel they've done all they can for her. Leave no stone unturned. She's their mother, for God's sake." Mira had formed a little habit of making nonsense rhymes in her head. She never wrote them down. She was hardly even conscious she did it. She did it now. "Some birds fly and some birds sink and some birds don't know how to think," she said, "because they know it can't help. So the only reason they want it is to alleviate guilt. And the obvious guilt is their wish for her to die." "Mira, that's ridiculous," he said in disgust. "You know, some people aren't like you. They have simple motives. They just want to do everything they can for someone they love. Love, love, heavens above, we all destroy in the name of love." Norm changed the subject when she was silent. Maury Spratt was in, remember him? I guess he was 2 years ahead of you. I knew him because his brother was in my class. Great basketball player, Lenny. Maury says he's vice president of an aluminium company now. Sells house siding or something. He laughed. "God, can't picture that. Skinny Lenny Spratt, a successful businessman. That really gets me." Maury came into the clinic for what he calls a scalp condition. Scalp condition? He's completely bald. Bald as a billiard ball. Funny. He works for a soft drink company. Gave me a good tip. Sunshine is going to merge with Transcontinental Cane Company. Put out soft drinks in cans. May plunge a little. Plunge? Buy some stock. Oh. Silence. "What about you? What did you do all day?" "I cleaned in here. Doesn't it look shiny?" He looked around. Didn't really notice. and they planted some flowers. Oh, good. He smiled at her benevolently. She had such a simple, sweet life. She could do things like plant flowers and get pleasure from it, because he provided her the means. "What do you do with yourself all day?" said little man to little maid. "You have nothing to do but play, move about dust and tea on a tray, and sing aloud to a heart's content while I'm out struggling to pay the rent." She cleared her throat and launched into what in her mind she called her column of family notes. "Normie broke a window playing baseball this afternoon. I hope you told him he'd have to pay for it out of his allowance. He didn't mean to do it. I don't care, he's got to learn responsibility. All right, Norm, I'll tell him," he said. "Why do you always have to make me be the heavy? I think you'd be just as interested in his getting a little sense of responsibility. That kid thinks money grows on trees." "In my yard is a little money tree, flowers and flowers, but none of it's for me. I rake and hoe and water to keep the tree in health, and all the neighbour women envy me my wealth. But all the little dollars growing on that tree belong to Norm the doctor, and none of them to me." "Yes, Norman, Clark got an A on a maths test." Good. He rose, he sighed, he was tired. He put his glass down on the wooden tabletop. "I'm going to bed," he said. "Big day tomorrow." "You looking for a lighter?"
Yeah.
"I've got 5 lines." "Big day tomorrow." She heard him finish in the bathroom, was aware of the bedroom light being turned off. She rose and picked up his glass. She rubbed the table with the sleeve of her robe, drying it and erasing the watermark. She carried his glass into the kitchen, returned, poured herself another brandy, and turned off the light. She never went to bed when he did if she could help it.
Pack is down. Closing to an end? Or
Yeah.
a chapter?
Maybe that's it. Say that?
Sounds good.
Yeah.
That
was it,
Is the
guys.
next one quickie? Yeah, no.
That
We'll
was-
start on the next one. Next one's a few pages. Cool. Do you want to push the X?
I wonder if
Top right
anyone's
corner?
watching. Do we know?
It'll say, I don't think that.
Oh, no,
anyone
there's
has
0
done it yet.
people.
No one's watching yet. Yeah, where were you? Fuck off, cunts. We don't even want to